Welcome along to this latest live stream from Seahawks Draft Blog. Rob Staton, Adam Nathan with us today. It's a UK special. So if you can put up with our British accents, then thank you for joining us tonight as we kind of just put a bow on the NFL draft. You will notice that the lights are working back in my house after last night when I had to watch the second day of the draft in pitch black darkness. So I now appear to have the halo back above my head in my living room. But I'm also still wearing a coat because I've just let the dogs out and I am still very ill and I am freezing again now because the door was open because it's very cold in England at the moment. It looked very cold in Cleveland as well where the draft was. It looked a bit like Manchester. Our British viewers will know what I'm talking about there. So Adam, it's in the books. I can't say that I ever expected the Seahawks to just pick 3 times in this draft. I thought they were going to definitely trade down a few times and end up picking the usual, 6, 7, 8 times in this draft. Only 3 players. What they come out with is a dynamic third receiver, a tackle with some potential, who many people were saying could go on the second day, could be a second or third round pick, and a cornerback who is not the usual type that they have gone for under Pete Carroll, but he's a special teams demon. And, this is a team that took BBK in the 5th round just to play special teams. I'm not saying that I'm completely writing off Trey Brown as just a special teamer at this stage, but I would imagine that that's played quite a bit into why they have taken him when they did in round 4. So how do you feel about the 3 areas that they've addressed and ultimately what they've got done in this draft?
So on my show with Stuart earlier in the week, I said that the roster, you could say, looks pretty strong, but I think probably for the first time in the Russell Wilson era, I think there are actual holes on the roster that probably had to be filled. Cornerback, third receiver, on the offensive line. And, normally they've had, they might have had spots of weakness, which you could pick up and say, well, you could do a bit better there, could do a bit better there. But that's natural. It's it's a drafting league. There's a stringent cap. So, you can't be perfect everywhere. But it did strike me that those 3 positions were areas that they needed to fill. And so I'm quite pleased that they have just taken 3 picks and tried to fill those 3 holes. And it does feel like, in free agency with Akella Witherspoon, like you just sort of just putting bodies in as opposed to hole filling, I would say. I personally wanted to take the best corner available at 56. I do feel that was the biggest position of need. It does terrify me if we come across a particularly good passing offense next year, how we're going to stop them. They've obviously addressed that with the second pick they had today. So in a way, I'm pleased because I feel like they've addressed the holes that I felt they have. And I suppose we'll find out in 6 months' time whether or not, it's just names again, or if they've actually addressed situations that they had to fill.
Curtis has sent a super chat in and he says, announcement, I'm matching super chat amounts input for this stream. Hit that dollar amount button like Cam on Vernon Davis. Well, that is quite a violent use of the button there. So be careful if you are going to do that. But that is, look, Curtis, I really appreciate that. Thank you very much for the super chat and for that offer. If you want to help support the channel and ultimately Seahawks Draft Blog as well, then super chat away and we will prioritize any super chat comments that come in. I am also going to prioritize this comment, Adam, because it refers to the English weather. England weather seems a lot like Seattle weather. Is that why you like the Seahawks? Laugh out loud. Okay, love the show. I don't know, actually, because the thing is in England, just to sort of let you in on how things are in England, all of you guys over in the States, I live in the north of England and Adam lives in the south of England. Now, the people in the south of England often will tell you that the weather is far superior in the south, that it's almost like a Mediterranean summer every day in parts of London and on the coast, and us in the north just live in a perennial rainy, miserable fog. But how is the weather in London, Adam?
I think that might be more of an indication of our dispositions as opposed to the actual weather. I think maybe we have a slightly rosier outlook on life in the south than the rugged north where you abide. I think with hospitality opening, for any American listeners that don't know, outdoor hospitality has been allowed to open since April. And in one great trolling fail swoop from the gods, I think we're in the middle or have just ended the coldest April on record in the UK. So perhaps there is a little bit of, we just enjoy the pain of wind and rain and fog. Is just so comforting that we could only be Pacific Northwest fans as well. So maybe there is something in there. That was quite a good comment. But I think we're gradually getting there, but it's still very much T-shirt and zippy weather as opposed to floral shirt and shorts and espadrilles.
Yeah, I was covering a soccer game earlier, and it was unbelievably cold. It was freezing. It was a 2-coat broadcast today, and and not enjoyable at all. And last year the weather was fantastic. The beer gardens, as they've reopened, would have been flowing. The beer would have been flowing. They would have been packed. Maybe it's a good thing that that's not the case this year. I don't know as we try and get through this, but the weather is very similar in Seattle to it is here in the UK. And if people want to know the North, if people watch Game of Thrones, I'm pretty sure that Game of Thrones is based on kind of like this country. I think that's what George R.R. Martin did, and kind of like the North, Jon Snow and all that lot. That's kind of like my side of the country. And Adam's a Lannister. They're that side. The evil ones, the baddies. That's what they are down in the South. But that's enough talk of that because, I don't want to give him a chance to come back. Let's get back to the NFL. So from when I look at the Seahawks roster, Adam, I look at it and I think, just to focus on these 3 picks, I really like D. Eskridge and have liked Dwayne Eskridge ever since January when I first watched him and thought he'd be a terrific option for the Seahawks. Exactly the kind of third receiver they need. I have no issue with Trey Brown as somebody who can come in. Yeah, he's smaller, but DJ Reed played very well. No issue with him coming in. And he is so good on special teams. And I think there is some value to that. And I watched his interview earlier, what he did with the Seattle media, and I thought it was fantastic. If you can't get fired up about that guy, then you are a cold-hearted person. And then Stone Forsyth, I think in round 6, I don't think you could get much more than that. If you were going for somebody who could potentially start for you at tackle with the size and the traits that you look for in a prospective left or right tackle, and I think he could potentially play either, then I think it was a shot to nothing and worth doing. Lance Zierlein was having a conversation with Joe Fan on Twitter, and Lance was saying that he graded Stone Forsyth in round 2 or 3, and the Seahawks took him in round 6. So I think you've got 3 picks there that you can go along with and say, that's fair enough. I just, like you, look at other areas of the roster. Like, I'm a little bit uncomfortable that Ethan Posick isn't really going to be pushed at center. Mm-hmm. That he kind of is, all right, they've got Kyle Fuller. But ultimately, is Kyle Fuller going to win the center job? And when the Seahawks play the Rams twice next year, and they come up against Aaron Donald, who's now going to be next to Bobby Brown, who I thought was a fantastic draft pick for the Rams. He comes up against those two. That worries me. Because it feels like the Seahawks have had to play Aaron Donald for 7 years. And I don't think they've ever properly taken seriously how badly you need good interior play, especially at center, when you are playing someone like Aaron Donald. I just wonder if they've been swayed too much by that one game that Joey Hunt had where he played really well against the Rams and now think that it's not that important. I think it is. And the other areas, cornerback, you mentioned there, I'm not convinced at all by the group. They've just got a bunch of guys. Like Pierre Desir, sounds comforting, doesn't it? But he's bounced around the league. Akilla Witherspoon's a guy who never really did anything in San Francisco. DJ Reed, good first season, but are we now sort of thinking of him as like a cast iron long-term starter? He's probably your best starting cornerback right now. And who would have thought that a year ago? So it's not a strong position group. Jaron Reed, you've taken a player who the last 2 full seasons he's had in Seattle, he recorded 17 sacks in those 2 seasons. You can't just say, oh, well, we don't need Jaron Reed anymore and just write that off. Who's producing, your 6 to 10 sacks from the interior this year? Because Al Woods isn't doing that. And I'm not convinced that Robert Nkemdiche is going to do that. So where's it coming from? These are the things that I think of if we're talking about can the Seahawks elevate themselves to be a Super Bowl team. And that's why I think only having 3 picks was an issue this year, Adam, because there was a lot of other areas that you want to address that you haven't been able to address because you don't have the cap space and you don't have the draft picks.
Yeah, and let's be honest, it was 3 picks, of which one of them was something that you thought, well, that could be a potential place you get at a start. I mean, you have asked me to keep you updated. So Pierre-Olivier Lestage, cornerback
Ooh,
Brian
ooh la
Mills.
la.
I know, ooh la la indeed.
It's very French.
Who
Very
played in the
French.
Shrine game, according to my co-host Stu Court. I don't know what position he is. He's an offensive lineman from Montreal.
I thought he was a right back for Paris Saint-Germain.
That would have made more sense. Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, for me, the center position, and admittedly, I'm not a draft Nick. I don't, kind of grind the tape like you do. But for me, the center position was Corey Linsley or bust. I mean, how seriously are you taking this position? How seriously are you taking Russell Wilson's comments of this is what I want? And, up to you what you want to do. They chose not to. They chose to stay cheap, in inverted commas, I would say. And I know that a lot of fans balk at, well, look at the money. As a friend of mine, Mike Dugar says to me regularly, they could afford to pay anyone they wanted to if they want to, because there are always ways you can find. I mean, look at the money Kansas City has spent on that offensive line, and they're just throwing the money around, and all the takes come in. Yeah, but they've got to pay Orlando Brown. Kansas City know they have to pay Orlando Brown. They're well aware. They've not just traded for the guy and he's turned up and think, oh my goodness, you know what? We've got to give him a contract, and we've completely let that go. They're well aware, and all of these teams can find ways. I mean, look at how the Saints will kind of find their way under the cap, from a position of being 3 times over it by the sounds of things in February. But I think, looking at the end of the draft, we've got a position where, and I feel like Seahawks live in this perpetual state of whatever your priors are about this team, you can probably find evidence to confirm them one way or the other. We can sit here and say, from my slightly more pessimistic disposition when it comes to sport, that there are still a couple of holes that I'm pretty nervous about. And I would worry if we came up against a quality team that would we just have the bodies to stop them? I'm not convinced. However, on the flip side, if the undefeated Father Time catches up with Tom Brady, and if Aaron Rodgers' situation with the Packers continues to escalate in the same way, you could make an argument that they've got the clearest route to the Super Bowl they've ever had under Russell Wilson. So it's quite an interesting point, isn't it? Actually, yeah. I mean, you're right. If the Packers end up imploding, that is there's no real apart from the Bucs, I guess. There's nobody who really sort of scares the crap out of you. Definitely not.
So we Adam and I have been here. We are now going to be joined by a third party. We've been talking in French terms. It's now going to become a ménage à trois. We are going to be joined by Robbie Williams. But I think, Robbie, as is often the case, before we introduce you, we need some dramatic draft music.
Welcome in to the First Draft Podcast.
The unnecessarily dramatic First Draft Podcast introduction there for Robbie Williams, who joins us now on the stream as well. So, Robbie, we've been chatting away about the Seahawks picks. Before we bring you in for a quick take, there is another super chat from the Lobster Special. Do you produce a Lobster Special, Adam, in your line of work?
We have to dabble in more of a kosher-friendly clientele, given where I work quite often. But we, keep it off the menu. But we can always find a lobster, a scallop, or a prawn somewhere along the line. So if Mr. Special fancy's coming down, I'm sure we can make it work for him, no problem. I
know that I'm in serious threat of appearing to be the greatest wuss who has ever entered the internet. But I'm allergic to shellfish. And this is off the back of admitting I fainted after my COVID jab yesterday is not a good look. He says, do you think the Brown pick is a sign the Seahawks might play less base defense going forward? Hope you're feeling better, Rob. It's an interesting thought. What do you think, Robbie? Is there a chance that is the case, that they'll play less base defense? I tend to think this is more a special teams / it works with DJ Reed, and this guy's got some decent tape and some decent stats and a good Senior Bowl, rather than necessarily any huge sea change that's going to happen. But at the same time, if you're going to blitz a lot, you've got a man cover. Trey Brown has got a lot of experience in man coverage.
I think that's it right there. I think he's got a lot of experience with the single coverage and being able to, be left kind of alone on an island covering a guy. So I feel like, I don't think we're going to switch away from the base defense per se, but I mean, you might see maybe a little bit different here or there. I mean, it kind of really depends on what they do at the linebacker position. Still, I mean, I'm interested to see if they bring back KJ Wright or what their plan is with Cody Barton. So, but yeah, I don't think they're going to change it from base defense. I think that's just what they're going to run, and they might mix up here and there.
Curtis, as we mentioned earlier, is very generously matching any of the super chats tonight, which is unbelievable given how much effort he's put in to help Seahawks Draft Blog over the last few months. So, Curtis, you're an absolute star, and he's put in another super chat. If you want to get in on the super chat fest, send us a question. Send a question for all of us or any of us, and we will prioritize that and we will answer it straight away. If there are quite a number of undrafted free agent signings coming in, none of them with quite the name of, was it Lestage, Adam, that you mentioned there?
What have we got? We've got his name, Pierre Olivier Lestage, which is just magnificent, really. Yeah, I've got a question for both of you, actually. Let's assume that all of the cornerback positions are up for grabs in camp, which I don't think is beyond the realms of possibility, that there isn't anyone that's necessarily nailed down a pick. Now, if DJ Reed and Trey Brown win the battle, which Pete said that he's going to play outside Brown, how would you feel if the Seahawks with DK Metcalf were going up against a team that had two cornerbacks that were 5'9" and 5'10"?
Oh, that is a spicy meatball. I'd be very concerned.
I think DJ Reed proved that, I mean, honestly, that he can play on the outside or the inside. And I think if Brown has the capability to kind of mimic that, I'm not super worried about it. I mean, I quite like having a tall physical center a cornerback that can, kind of hang with some of those big boys. So, I mean, it makes maybe some of those contested balls a little bit, easier for the wide receivers, but as long as they're aggressive, like I was saying earlier, I just I want corners that have an attitude, that want to come in and have some swag to them and can play the position. So for me, if he can come in and be that guy, and I watched this tape today and I was really impressed by him, and I mean, I don't know if he's necessarily a Nico Thorpe replacement, like Rob was kind of saying earlier, but I really think that he is a guy that could probably come in and compete, and I like the fact that we also got two guys that can return kickoffs and punt returns. And so you have another guy in there that can help out in special teams in that aspect. But for me, I just saw someone say bring Sherm home, and that's what I'm still hoping. I'm still hoping we bring Sherm home, and we'll see. Like, I know we still got some tall cornerbacks, but we'll just see how they compete with some of the smaller guys.
You know what's interesting for me, guys, is I agree with you, Robbie, to an extent that, you want some good corners who can cover, and whether they're 6'4" with 34-inch arms or whether they're, the size of Trey Brown doesn't really matter. But it seems to me like something's changed, because when Carroll and Schneider came in, and I don't know if it's just that the league's changed and they feel like they've got to adapt, or their approach has got to change. But I got the sense when they came in 2010 that the feeling was to try and mimic the AFC North, that was to be a Pittsburgh, to be a Ravens, that ultimately that was the team that you tried to emulate. And they go out and they bring that toughness and that size. Your Marshawns come in, your Cam Chancellors come in. You go and get your answer essentially to Ed Reed or, Troy Polamalu with an Earl Thomas. Their offensive line was huge. They had options on the D line, and it was a really tough physical team. And they're not that anymore. They're more finesse these days. They're smaller. They're quicker. As much as people want to try and make out that Jamal Adams is this, Cam Chancellor style player, I just don't think he is. I think he's like an Energizer bunny. I don't think he's a predator. I don't think he's like that. And I think we're seeing with these like smaller corners, quicker, smaller receivers, a different looking O-line. There's no Breno on this O-line, is there? Let's be right. There's no Marshawn in the backfield. It's a lot more, to me, geared towards quickness, speed, playing in space than it is we're going to absolutely kick you up the arse, which is what it was 10 years ago. How do you feel about that? Do you agree?
I definitely agree. I think it would be difficult to say that the ceiling is as high for any team as maybe the best team in franchise history. So let's park that one. I think the ceiling, as I said to you just before Robbie came on, is that if things fall in the right way, given the lack of really quality teams in the NFC, it wouldn't stun me if this could be our clearest path to the Super Bowl. However, I also think that the floor of this team might be lower than it ever has been under Russell Wilson, in his tenure as quarterback. I mean, I don't know what you think about that, Robbie, but it wouldn't, if things go badly with this roster, it could be really bad. And I don't feel like it in the past that was ever going to be the case. There was always going to be a baseline, but the pass rush is going to be led by Carlos Dunlap right now. You don't know what's going to happen with his age. Bobby's getting a year older. The cornerbacks, not sure. Jamal Adams needs to prove himself as a safety first and foremost, as opposed to a blitzer. So I think that leaves me with a little bit of a concern.
Yeah, I think I have some of the same concerns, and I think you're right. I mean, the ceiling could be, a really solid season, and this could be one of the best cores that we've had for a while. And but you start looking at the teams like Rams and their draft, and the 49ers are coming back healthy, and Arizona they just keep adding pieces that who knows what's going to happen. How good is JJ Watt going to be for them? And opposite side of Chandler Jones, who's now healthy and going to be back. They got all of a sudden they got a fierce pass rush that you have to account for. But with Russell Wilson and the way it is, I think I would be shocked if it was the lowest I could see is games we would win would be the lowest would be maybe 8 to 9, and then ceiling could be 13. So who knows? It really just depends. I mean, injuries happen along the way throughout the season as well, and we're watching all these people getting undrafted free agents coming in, and I'm just looking up this BJ Emmons, and right out the gate, just like this is like a guy that just screams Seattle to me. So I don't know, man. We could really see. It's gonna be interesting to see how it plays out, and add a 17th game in there as well. That's going to change things a little bit.
Oh God, that is going to really wind me up. That 17th game. It's just the lack of symmetry around everything now. It's like you no longer have a 10-6, or a 9-7. Now you're going to have a 10-7 or 11-6. It just feels wrong. I almost wish they just got. I mean, they're going to get 18 games anyway. I wish they just sort of skipped straight to 18 and we could just have the even number. I don't have OCD, but that was going to really wind me up that after a couple of years. And plus all the records are going to be ruined. Like all records that are set over a number of years are now going to be smashed because there's another game in there. We've had another super chat. Kyle, top man Kyle, going for the big $10. I'm disappointed with the lack of center taken in the draft. However, do you believe that Waldron can scheme Aaron Donald out of the game the way the 49ers did last year with a patchwork line? Certainly in that first game between LA and San Francisco, Aaron Donald did nothing. And I know because I had a bet on him to get 2 sacks in that game and he didn't get them. And that was very frustrating. And as you mentioned there, it was not set up for San Francisco to stop Aaron Donald in that game, and they did it. So hopefully, yes, he will have some ideas to do that. And I always thought, guys, it was always get Wilson on the move, do a little bit more than just like the Seahawks try and do some of that stuff, but they don't shift the pocket. They don't get a lot of motion. It was always kind of like Wilson would drop back and then try and scramble away. And then the Rams, and as other teams do, kind of were ready for what Wilson would do in that situation. And Leonard Floyd has feasted to the tune. Like I get the feeling that sometimes like 90% of Leonard Floyd's career sacks were against Seattle, whether he played in Chicago or in LA. And yeah, I think they need to come up with a plan to get around that. I think he's the thing that you have to cling on to, Shane Waldron. And I wrote this in my blog post at the end of the draft, is that I don't think the roster's taken a big step forward. I don't think in terms of personnel, they're any closer to being a contender. It's whether Waldron can elevate them to a point where they are really ramped up on offense to the extent that like Rodgers, for example, had that MVP season last year with Matt LaFleur, another guy who's come through the McVay way of doing things. Can they achieve that? Because if they can, and Wilson is the MVP, and they do get to a point where maybe they have home field advantage, which, let's be right, even last year they should have had. If they hadn't blown that stupid Giants game or the Arizona game earlier in the year, as bad as they were at times last season, they would have had home field advantage. Don't think they'd have done much with it, given what happened in the Rams game, but they should have had it. And if they can get that next year, and if fans are back, they've got a better chance. But it's also hard to be optimistic, isn't it, when they've lost? Well, they've won one playoff game in 4 years. You kind of need to see them do better than that before you can really invest any faith.
Yeah, I'm with Kyle. I mean, I'm disappointed, with the lack of center taken, and I think that was kind of my disappointment yesterday when we didn't trade down. Again, I'm not just like I'm very happy with D. Eskridge, but I was really hoping that we trade down, get a couple extra picks, and take a center, and that was kind of what I was shooting for and hoping for, and the fact that we didn't even get one. It makes me a little disappointed as well. And you're right. A lot of this is dependent on Shane Waldron and what can he do with our offense. And I'm excited to see it because, you're right. I mean, in that one game, Aaron Donald was shut down. So maybe he has the recipe for success and we can teach our own line how to stop this guy. Since he's the biggest threat on the Rams defense. And, if we can stop him, I feel really good about that. So.
Adam?
Yeah, I mean, look, another thing that is probably fair to say is that, I think Aldon Smith had 3 sacks of his 5 sacks last season against Seattle. Aaron Donald consistently does it against Seattle. There's a Russell Wilson factor to this as much as anything else, in the sense that Aaron Donald eventually is going to beat his guy. Like, he's too good to keep under wraps the whole time. But, I've not watched the tape of San Francisco, but it wouldn't stun me if the MO for the quarterback at the time, whether it was Garoppolo or Nick Mullins who was playing, I'm not sure. It would have been, if you see that number flash through, just get rid of the ball. And I respect that Wilson doesn't necessarily want to do that at all times. And he wants to make a play, which is great. But it wouldn't stun me if, when you go back and look at all of Aaron Donald's success against the Seahawks, a lot of it would be on the quarterback as much as anything, which is another thing that Shane Waldron presumably will have to try and, eke out of Wilson's game if he can.
The undrafted free agents are coming in. We'll try and get a bit of a list of who they got. If you want to, that's an interesting one. Kay Johnson.
I just saw it. Dude, that's huge. That is huge.
Huge for my YouTube channel because I've interviewed him. So I can go and put that out on Twitter now and hopefully everyone will watch it. That is great. Great for Kay Johnson because, I had a chance to speak with him and I was quite lucky, really. The guys that I spoke to this year, I came off the back of everyone thinking that might be the best one I've done, the best player interview I've done in terms of the draft. And Kay Johnson he just oozed charisma and confidence. And I'm not sure why he's gone undrafted, given some of the players like a long snapper was drafted, for crying out loud. I have no idea if there's some kind of like medical issue there or something along those lines, but I'm delighted that he's going to Seattle. He had a great Senior Bowl. He reminded me a lot of Tyler Lockett. I do think he's a guy who can stick. I think if I was John Ursua, I'd be scared to death because I think he's coming for your job, son. And I think that's a really good pickup. And I can see that people in the comment section are reacting suitably with F-bombs galore in delight at that, which suggests that people are happy with it.
I love what ESPN has to say about him, their overall traits. Production. So 1 through 5, 1 being exceptional, 5 being marginal. Production, 1. Durability, 1. Intangibles, 1. The only thing they gave him a 4 on was height and weight and speed. I mean, that sounds like a pretty dang good wide receiver right there.
Do you guys think that with the ability and the depth of wide receiver, there's just so many come out every year. Do you think that puts extra pressure on Eskridge as the second round pick? Because, I said to start the show before Robbie jumped on that corner would definitely have been my pick because I just feel that was a position where you really needed a guy to, step up and be maybe even your number 1 straight off the bat going into this year. And I kind of feel like getting your third wide receiver when you've already got maybe the best duo in the league with such a valuable pick, your only valuable pick of the draft, perhaps puts a bit of extra pressure on him. Like, he really has to be a game changer for us now.
Probably go for it, because I'm just going to tweet this K. Johnson interview.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if it puts any more pressure on him, but I mean, what I love is the competition, at the wide receiver position, and hopefully, iron sharpens iron, and everyone gets better off of each other. And really, it's just a matter of like, what we see in probably Freddie Swain and John Ursua, and we're probably just stacking up. We're giving Russ weapons, and we talked about this in the offseason about getting Russ weapons. And here's some guys that they're bringing in, and we can give Russ an opportunity to, make a bunch of plays. And we have some guys who can step in if someone gets hurt. This is great. I mean, I really love, I don't know if it adds any more pressure per se. I mean, he should probably feel the pressure anyways, being a small school guy and 56th pick, and he probably is going to feel it regardless of who we pick up. I mean, he's going to luckily go in, he's going to have Tyler Lockett and DK Metcalf to kind of lead the way. And, Russ will be right there with him. I think it's awesome. I'm really excited about all these guys that we're getting now.
Yeah, it's a good group. And I wrote again, at the end of the draft, that clearly the Seahawks are going to try and use this whole, we haven't drafted many people, come and play for us because you will get better opportunities. You're not going to be competing against a 4th round pick and being immediately a disadvantage because teams don't want to cut a 4th round pick for an undrafted rookie. They'd rather try and find a way to keep the draft pick. In Seattle, you're not going to have that stumbling block there, that blockade. To have, I love the French name. I love the fact that they seem to be signing about 10 running backs as well, because I think they need some competition and some depth there. They need to find somebody. But I have to say the K. Johnson and Tamori and Terry signings really are the ones that stand out for me, because I think both of those players are guys that have got a realistic chance to make it in this league. And I like that. It's going to be a fun competition to watch. Along with the Eskridge coming in. So really like that. Keep the super chats coming. We've had a few already. Keep them coming. We'll stay on for a little bit longer. Adam, I know we initially said we were going to do about half an hour. I don't know if when you need to dip out, just let me know if you're good. Robbie's just joined us as well. We'll come back to this chat in a second. I want to play this because the Stone Forsyth pick, it was great timing. I just sort of went on KJR to chat about what the Seahawks had done and stuff like that. And then they drafted Stone. They traded up for Stone Forsyth while I was live on the air. So this was sort of like the live reaction to the Stone Forsyth pick. And then we're going to come back and have a bit of a laugh at the Niners.
Pick that they got by sliding back 8 spots in the 4th round. And they have taken Stone Forsyth, a tackle out of Florida. So we were just talking about how they need a tackle. He's 6'8", 307 pounds, tackle out of Florida. Stone Forsyth is a Seahawk. So
this is a guy that a lot of people liked. If you sort of call, he was one of the trendy draft Twitter names, that a lot of people were saying he could be like a 2nd or 3rd round pick, that he was really flying up the boards. And a lot of people really, really liked him. Now, I think it's a little bit of surprise, given there was so much buzz about him coming into this, that he has lasted as long as he has. And if you're looking for somebody who has the potential to start at the next level in the 6th round, this is a decent shout. This is somebody who you can come in. He's got a lot of work to do. I mean, he is, I would say that he's physical. He gets after people. You see that a lot on tape, that he can actually get into space for a guy his size, go and lock onto somebody at the 2nd level and absolutely hammer them. I think you see a lot of the things that you want to see in a left tackle. As I mentioned, he has got really good size. We're talking about a guy who is 6'8", 307, 34.5-inch arms, 83.25-inch wingspan. These are things you can work with here. He ran a 4.63 short shuttle at 307 pounds. That's really good. The one thing that he hasn't got is the explosive traits, which is probably why he's lasted as long as he has. If you look at the guys who go early on the offensive line, they're the ones that test well in the vertical, the broad, and the bench press. Generally, they go a lot earlier than the guys who don't. And Stone Forsyth didn't have the most explosive workout. But I really like this pick because this is somebody, I'm not saying he's going to be a starting left or right tackle in the NFL one day in the 6th round because, you know, they are rare.
Sure.
But he's got a chance. He's got a chance. So there we go. That was the live reaction when Stone Forsyth was drafted. I think that is a good draft pick there for the Seahawks late round. So we are prioritizing the super chat. If you have a super chat and you want to get in there, we will immediately shove that on and answer any questions you have. Or if you just want to help support the channel, go for it. But I have to make an exception for this comment from Pete, which just says bang, bang, Niner gang, which is perhaps the most embarrassing term in the NFL. But I've said it there. And I just got to look. Me and Robbie, we talked about it yesterday, didn't we? A little bit, what the Niners did. And we had a bit of fun at their expense. But Adam, you're here now, so we can talk about it again. I don't understand why the Niners have been let off the hook to the extent that they have for what they have just done. They have essentially had a really difficult 2020 season where their quarterback got injured again and everybody got injured again. And they ended up finishing with the 12th overall pick and not having a good season just a year removed from the Super Bowl. And that, to me, what they've done there is just had a complete knee-jerk reaction. That they've kind of like started off looking at, can we sign Andy Dalton? Like that was going to be the answer. Can we go and get Joe Flacco? Like that was going to be the answer. And then when they failed to do that, it was like, well, you know, we can't get Aaron Rodgers and you know, Stafford's gone to the Rams. So I don't know, let's just trade up and then we'll decide what we're going to do after that. And you end up moving from 12 to 3. You give up your next 2 first-round picks as a consequence. And all of the talk after that move is that it's Mac Jones. But then as the weeks go on, it's like, oh, they seem to be swaying towards Trey Lance now. So it's like, what? You traded up not knowing who you were going to draft 100%. That just doesn't sound like a thing that a well-run franchise does. And look, I've watched every game of Mac Jones for Alabama. I have watched every game of Trey Lance. It's not hard because they only played 1 season. So I've watched both of all of their games in college football. So I feel like I can comment much more than like these Niner fans who are taking little videos of themselves and reacting to the fact that they drafted Trey Lance on Thursday night. I don't think either of them are worth the 3rd overall pick. And I don't think they'd be worth the 3rd overall pick if you just had that as your native pick. I think trading 2 firsts to get up there is obscene. I think it's ridiculous. I think Mac Jones for me is a 2nd round pick in terms of talent. Quarterbacks go early, fine. The Patriots took him, whatever. I thought Trey Lance was a 2nd round pick. I thought he was going to go in the same range as Jordan Love. He's ended up going 3rd overall. Watch his game against Central Arkansas. It's terrible. You know, watch his pro day. It's not good. I think Niners fans think they're getting Josh Allen here or Patrick Mahomes. I think they're more likely to have got Mitch Trubisky, quite frankly, and I love it. What do you think, Adam?
It's funny. I mean, you'll know this. Well, you've said you've studied all the tape that there is to study. It does strike me a little bit, and maybe Trey Lance will end up being a Hall of Fame quarterback and hopefully not lead the 49ers to 5 Super Bowls in the next 15 years. But it does strike me that when you get transcendent generational talents, horrible phrase, but in the terms of Patrick Mahomes, it's worth it. When you get a transcendent talent in Patrick Mahomes, people try to dissect what that talent can do and say, right, well, can we find that? Can we find that? Can we find that? And I think what's happened is they've almost like put these traits into a spreadsheet and it's honed in, picked out a few, and Trey Lance may have a few of them, with the explosive arm, with the way he can move around. And I don't know, you'll know more than I will, Rob, but it almost seems like they've been seduced by traits they've seen in Mahomes and just assumed, well, this must be the next guy that can do it. When actually, sometimes you need to take a step back and say, no, Patrick Mahomes is just a freak.
He's a freak. And if you try and get the next Mahomes, then it's like saying I want to get the next John Elway, isn't it? It's like saying I want to get, I'll just, do you know what? I just will go and find the next Aaron Rodgers or the next Russell Wilson. It's very difficult to do. What you really need to do is you need to find the next person, don't you? You need to find the next guy who is going to be the guy that everyone looks for next time. And, I don't even think you need to set your sights that high. It's like when Arizona took Kyler Murray, you sort of embrace Kyler Murray for what he is, and you go, is he capable of like leading you to where you need to go? And I think he is. I don't think Arizona's well coached. I don't think they're building their team well enough around Kyler Murray, but he's good enough. And that's kind of how you have to approach it. And listen, if the Niners had traded up for Trevor Lawrence or Kyler Murray even, or I'm trying to think of the quarterbacks who've gone in recent years, my mind's come completely blank. It comes with some, the quarterbacks that you kind of expect, or that you watch them and you go, wow. Like if they'd just done this for Kyler Murray, watching Kyler Murray the way that he played at Oklahoma, I'd be concerned, guys. I'd be thinking, I don't want to see him in San Francisco with Shanahan. But when I watch Trey Lance, I'm thinking, fantastic. You've just tied yourself to Trey Lance for the next 3 or 4 years. And the ramifications of this not working out now, because you've traded so much, put Shanahan under a lot more pressure than if they'd just taken him at 12. I think the Niners have got massive buyer's remorse, because if it really was between Jones and Lance, which is what all of the media was saying, your Schefters and all of that, Jones was there at 12. They didn't need to give up 2 future first-round picks, and yet they did. And here we are with Trey Lance. I just love the fact, though, that the Niners fans are so excited about it because they didn't take a guy with a dad bod. And it's like, that's not how these things, Tom Brady had a dad bod. He's the greatest quarterback that's ever lived. It doesn't matter that Trey Lance looks like he could be a male model. It's whether or not he can throw a football properly. And I think there are some major concerns there.
I think one of the things about this, though, you kind of said it earlier, is that Arizona isn't well coached. The 49ers are well coached, and Kyle Shanahan is a quarterback guru. I mean, he works magic with quarterbacks. So for me, I that was what I was worried about, would be him tapping into that potential that Trey Lance could be, the guy that he turns out to be exactly what they're hoping to be, like a total stud, maybe the next Patrick Mahomes. I mean, as of right now, he's not that guy, right? We've watched the tape. We know that he's not. He's only got a certain amount of game tape to even watch, and he's coming from another small school, still the same school as Carson Wentz. But I mean, still, it's like one of those things where they're a good coach, they're good, or well-coached team, and that's what makes me nervous. Really, that'd be the only thing that Shanahan's able to work some magic and turn him into something that we don't want him to be, right? That would be my only worry.
Yeah, that is a fair point. The Shanahan aspect must be taken into consideration here. And I think Shanahan is a genius. But I also think he's a genius in terms of scheming. It's like his scheme is if you can master it, it will succeed. And it becomes very hard to stop, as we saw with the Falcons in 2016, when Matt Ryan was the MVP. I think part of his problem is getting the guy who can master it. And can Trey Lance master it? I would have been more fearful of Mac Jones mastering this scheme.
Well, we'll see what Shanahan can do as well. Can he put Trey Lance in a position to succeed? Can he use his athleticism? Can he, what in his offense can he make to, help Trey Lance, move forward and succeed in this league? I mean, that's the thing. I think Shanahan's such a smart coach that he can do that. And that's kind of my fears.
Yeah, I think you look at the quarterbacks that he's worked well with. It's Matt Schaub, it's Matt Ryan, it's Kirk Cousins. They're all very similar quarterbacks to Mac Jones, and I just think, well, I don't think either of them are worth trading up for. But I'd have been more concerned about the guy that can execute it at a high level. You do this, please. You read that guy and do that, and we'll win. I'd be more worried about that than this guy's got a big arm. This guy can run really fast. He's only played like a handful of games. For North Dakota State, they run the same plays, and for me, I'm relieved, and I'm going to enjoy this moment if it's the last thing I do. That the Niners have drafted Trey Lance and given up everything for it. We have another super chat. Have the Seahawks significantly improved in the offseason? If not, is there a move post-draft that can put them in the contender convo, or are they in limbo again? What do you think, Adam?
I think, as we said earlier, it depends on what your priors were before, the offseason, before free agency, before the draft. You could make a very compelling case that this Seahawks team could ride a favorable schedule, perhaps, and home field advantage all the way there. Or we can look at it and say there are holes there. Now, do you think that KJ Wright and Richard Sherman fill those holes? I certainly don't think they would make you worse if you had the two of them. I think that they would both give you an enormous boost on what you've got on those positions. And I would assume that those will be two guys that they pursue maybe June, July this time, give them a bit more of a break, that those older bodies don't necessarily need to be going through the rigors of camp all the way through. I'm alarmingly optimistic in what the potential is, but I think that might be because I think the NFC could be at its lowest ebb for a good few years, albeit the division that we're in, the NFC West, maybe have 4 of the top 6 teams in the conference right now.
I think for me, Robbie, what would make me feel better about it is if they pull off some kind of trade, perhaps in training camp or trades, of the quality of Carlos Dunlap, of Jadeveon Clowney. You know, and people, as soon as you say Jadeveon Clowney these days, people start crying. You know, but the point is that if you got to training camp and you got a top, you know, former top pick with that kind of pedigree for a 3rd rounder to go into the season with, I'd be like, yeah, I've not got a massive issue with stuff like that. I'd rather you then didn't just lose them after a year and then put yourselves in a massive hole like they did a year ago. But that's the kind of thing for me, you know, if we're talking about moves to get them over the top, it's probably something that happens that really smacks you in the face in September for me, rather than a KJ Wright signing or something like that. It's that extra move that maybe you don't see coming. Just whatever it is, don't give away 2 more firsts and a 3rd for another safety, please.
Yeah, to answer the first part of that question, you know, have they significantly improved this offseason? No, I think they have improved. I don't think it's been a significant improvement, but I think they are a better football team than they were last year. I think they've got some good pieces, and I'm really, you know, like I said, I'm really enjoying kind of what they're doing with this offense right now and who they're out there targeting and you know, getting Russ some more weapons, and let's see what they can do. And it's the Shane Waldron effect, right? We'll have to see, you know, what he can do in the offense to, you know, what he can do to help Russ and the rest of the guys get going. So that for me, that's an improvement over, you know, our offensive coordinator last year, in my opinion. I think, you know, even though he's never called plays before, as of right now, I think it's an improvement. And then, yeah, kind of the same thing. If there's a move to make us, you know, better contenders would be something unknown at this point. I don't really know what it would be. You know, again, injuries will play a big effect in that, and kind of what could happen going forward. But, you know, I'd like to see another center, someone come in, you know, compete with the center spot, and, you know, someone that can handle Aaron Donald a little bit better, maybe better than Ethan Posick can. And then, you know, I'm still a big fan of Eric Fisher. You know, I wouldn't mind getting him on a 2-year deal and letting him sit out this year and you know, rehab and then come back next year and do a prove it year deal. Cause I think, you know, he's 30 years old, you know, comes back by the time he's playing with us, 31, 32, has an opportunity to, you know, lock down that left tackle position when Dwayne Brown goes out for a few years. And I think that's really, I mean, he's a hell of a left tackle sitting out there that no one's picking up just because he had an injury last year. That's another way to improve. But again, that's kind of long-term thinking.
Just to run through some of these undrafted free agent signings, I'm on Joe Fan's website here, and he's made a bit of a list with them here. So Tamorrion Terry, I think that's a great pickup. I was thinking he could be an option sort of round 6 time. He has fallen a little bit under the radar because he did not have a good 2020. But going into the season, he was seen by some as, you know, could really elevate himself, get into that sort of 2nd round type of range. Didn't happen for him, but he's talented. I think you've bought an extra draft pick by signing him as an undrafted free agent. So I think that was a really good signing for the Seahawks there to kick things off. Jared Hooker, long sort of offensive lineman, works inside. I think good competition to perhaps try at guard there. Adam, I have to let you come in for the name of the Montreal player who was signed, just because you just give the name a bit of flair that I don't think, even though I did French A level, and I have actually done a work experience for a newspaper in France, and I used to go there every summer. You have just got that Gallic flair to your voice when you deliver this name.
I think it's just a natural cadence that I've got, which is just suitable for offensive linemen from Montreal specifically. It's Pierre-Olivier Lestage, and that is just a terrific name to take us into the... If you can't win a Super Bowl with that name, then what are you doing?
Do you know what? If they did win the Super Bowl and he was not part of the team, it would be less satisfying for me. You know, it would elevate the success if he was a member of the starting roster on that day. Okay, so he's coming in. He is reportedly a 6'3", 305-pound lineman who took part in the East-West Shrine game, and he is from Montreal, from a team in Montreal. Brian Mills has signed. He's a long cornerback with the arm length that the Seahawks like. Had a few decent moments in the Senior Bowl, had a few rough moments as well, but he is that kind of long, tall cornerback that the Seahawks traditionally have sought. BJ Emmons, or Amons, I'm not sure, has signed from Florida Atlantic University. A running back, seems to be of good size looking at his picture. Josh Johnson is another running back from, I think this is Louisiana Monroe, isn't it? He is another running back who has joined again, appears to be a sizable running back, seems to have some size to him. Kay Johnson, who we've talked about an awful lot. I noticed this, PFF have tweeted this on the news that he is signing with Seattle, that Kay Johnson was their 77th ranked player on their entire board. 77. Now, a lot of this, what we've got to remember here is PFF deliberately go out of their way to do things differently. And they graded Kay Johnson as the best receiver at the Senior Bowl by an absolute mile. So that has impacted their grade in the same way that they tweeted about Justin Fields being the definite pick for the San Francisco 49ers number 3 for about a month, and it never happened. And their rankings are kind of distinct and different to everybody else's, but they had him as the 77th best player in the draft, and the Seahawks have got him as an undrafted free agent. I have tweeted the link to the interview I did with him, but if you go on the YouTube channel, please subscribe to it. You can find it on there as well, but I've tweeted that out. So if you want to go and check that out, please feel free.
I want to answer Perry's question real fast, if you don't mind, Rob.
Let me just very quickly run through these last couple, Robbie. Okay. Connor Weddington from Stanford, who is a kick return specialist, has also signed. And the most recent one is John Rattigan of Army, who is a linebacker. So those are the players at the moment who have signed for the Seahawks. There is another super chat. Big thanks to Brent. Big thanks to Curtis Allen as well. And I don't know if Brent has replied with another one saying thank you, but either way, guys, you are legends. Thank you so much for that. What was it? Was it Perry's comment that you wanted to reply to here?
Yeah.
You can see the comments here. So is it this one?
Yeah, he says he has one winning, and then he said y'all are pissing in the same bucket. That's pretty funny, Perry. Yeah, no, I mean, really, honestly, I think it's just the fact that I think what I was saying about Kyle Shanahan is with how he works well with quarterbacks. Like, I mean, like Rob was saying, like Schaub, Matt Ryan, these players, that he's just a really good quarterback coach. And so what he could do with Trey Lance and kind of tap some of that potential that he has, maybe that's kind of what I was referring to. I mean, yeah, but they've also been bitten really hard by injuries too. Like last year, they won 6 games and they had like nobody. So, I mean, for me, I think they are a really, well-coached team. So I just want to reply to that.
And if you have got we're going to wrap up very shortly. We'll do another 5 minutes if you guys are okay with that. And we'll call it a square hour, and then we are done. We are out of here. And in the coming days, I will post the 2022 ridiculously early watch list on the blog. And we may well do another stream or something. We may well see what we can get out there on YouTube. My plan is then to take a break from the blog and writings. It's been pretty relentless for the last year, but I may still do a few streams and a few YouTube videos. So subscribe to the channel and hit the little bell button so you'll know when we're doing any of these live streams, when any interviews pop out. I try and keep up with the YouTube channel, even if I'm taking a little break from the blog. So thank you for all the super chats so far. If you want to send one in, you can do. how do you feel, fellas, about the fact that we're now in the big boring bit of the NFL? You know, we're in that sort of horrible no man's land situation now, where not much happens between the start of May and the end of September. I suppose you get training camp, and that provides some interest. But what is training camp going to look like this year again? With, you know, there's still going to be some lingering effects of the pandemic.
Yeah, there's going to be a lot of virtual stuff, and I think that kicked off a little while ago, a couple of weeks ago, didn't it? With teams saying they weren't going to attend. I might give you something to stew on for a month or so, Rob. You asked that, you know, for some overall takes in the draft, and you may have discussed this on Monday, but on Friday, sorry, after the first round. But watching the first round, I always feel that that's the first time you get an indication of what the league thinks is important, which positions, and obviously a lot of teams take by need, but you see, well, obviously wide receiver is a huge position of focus, and you've written about this extensively, and so I couldn't help but ask that it's got to piss you off beyond belief that the Seahawks' entire draft was thrown up in the air for a position that wasn't taken by a single team in the first round this year.
It's a great point. I mean, part of that is the players. I know that Daniel Jeremiah, we kept going on about that Trevon Moehrig was his 17th best player in the draft, but I don't know where he got that from, frankly. I mean, I didn't even think Moehrig was the best safety in the draft, let alone the 17th best player. So, I mean, if there was somebody like Jamal Adams in this draft, then obviously he probably would have gone in the top 10 or the top 15 or whatever. So you have to consider that, but it's true. It's clear that the NFL overall does not think you absolutely desperately have to have a safety in order to succeed. And I think that they're also saying that you can find safeties beyond, you know, that first round. You can find guys to plug in there without necessarily needing to make that big investment. Now, spending on a big safety is fine. And honestly, I would not have had an issue if it had just been the first round pick this year and maybe that third. And then you sort of restart again next year with a full quota of picks. For me, Adam and Robbie, it's the fact that it was 2 firsts and a third and a player for Adams and a fourth. You know, you start talking about investment of a quarterback level there. And it was particularly frustrating as well because Carroll's always kind of justified that as, well, it would have cost this much to get up and move up in the draft anyway. And then you see the Jets move from 23 to 14 for what amounted to, I think, like a third round pick and a swap of third and fourths. And that was to move up to 14, not to 6, where Adams actually went in the draft. But it goes to show that you didn't necessarily need to give up the house to move up in order to try and get someone like Jamal Adams. And if you trade up in a draft for a player, you get 4 years of club control. When you trade for Jamal Adams, you get 1 or 2, and then you have to pay him an absolute fortune. So that's the difference.
Yeah, I mean, if I'm being honest, I don't really have much more to say about the Adams situation. We've talked about it quite a bit. We beat a dead horse on that, so I don't really have much more to say on that aspect, to be honest with you. But yeah, I'll just go through this again. It looks like we missed a guy, Jake Curhan from tackle out of California. Looks like we missed him. Didn't he have a heart condition or something? You're on mute, Rob.
I'm not sure to it, but I think it'd be interesting. You know, I think there's been some interesting names they've signed already. I mean, that part of me was kind of hoping that they would land, 1 or 2 other, not just at receiver, especially given that they, spent their first pick on a receiver. I've not seen where Darius Stills is signed. Dylan Moses, I've not seen where he's gone. Hamilcar Rashed, I don't think got drafted in the end. Kenny Yeboah to me, they're guys that I expected to be drafted and they weren't. So it's kind of like, can you end up getting some value there with those guys? So we'll see what happens there. They may well have signed somewhere by now. I've not been looking on Twitter, so we will find out. We've done an hour, and fellas, I think it's been good. And Moses has gone to the Jaguars, so that he's off the board there. I've not seen where Darius Stills has gone. I feel bad for him because he was one of the best interviews, and I think wherever he goes, he will give it his all, and I think he's got a chance to make it. He is undersized, but I think he is a really good player. Guys, I appreciate your company tonight. Thank you for giving up an hour of your time. Really appreciate it. Adam, I have to ask before I let you go, what on earth is going on with Spurs, and how long before Pete Carroll gets a call, because you are running through every coach and not seemingly getting anywhere?
Yeah, I mean, I was going to say that I follow one team with an archaic coach who has an over-reliance on an outdated scheme and system potentially, and maybe looks at players that most teams in the league wouldn't go for, and they also support Spurs, so that has been a bit of an issue. But yeah, no, thankfully, I think we've hopefully gotten rid of that stench from N17, and we can look ahead to a brighter future.
Listen, I saw something about Gareth Southgate yesterday. Is this true or not?
That would be the end of my season ticket if the walking waistcoat became the new Spurs manager. What would be your preferred method of disposing of a season ticket? Well, in the olden days, it used to have a very visual throwing of the season ticket book on the pitch. I remember Craig Hignett scoring, and any Spurs fan might remember this, in 2003. We lost 4-0 at home to Blackburn on the last day of the season, and there was a ceremonial raining of the season ticket books onto the pitch, which was a terrific thing to see, even in spite of a 4-0 defeat. But now it's the season ticket card that I think just rolls over every year. I'm not sure. So maybe it could, treat them like a very small frisbees or something that we can try and take out Daniel Levy with from the other side of the stadium. But we'll have to see how that works.
See, that is just such a throwback thing. I don't know whether, Robbie, you've had season tickets, have you, in Seattle? So,
for the Seahawks, not Sounders. Yeah,
not for the Sounders, but for the Seahawks.
Yeah.
So going back like 10, 15 years ago, did the season ticket come in a book with tickets that you pulled out? They did. Yeah. That's amazing. Yeah. That's what they do over here. So I remember as a kid having, you collect them, you give you a little book, your tickets in, and then every game you tear the latest ticket out and you go in, and it was special. And you're right. I can't imagine the season ticket card has quite the same level of romantic nature as a ticket book. Yeah.
Now, I mean, for the Seahawks anyways, like 2 years ago, they got rid of the books, and now you have it on your phone. You just walk in.
Oh, get a phone. That's
you don't even get a card. You don't even get a card. Yeah. They send you a like a season ticket holder gift every year, but that's about it.
There are quite a few interesting comments that have come in right at the last minute. Ashwin says, I know I missed one there, but Mike says Harry Kane to Manchester City. So I thought I'd leave you with that, Adam.
Thanks, Mike. I've had a really good week, so I really needed that. Thanks so much. That's terrific.
Ashwin says, snap up Graham Potter while you can. He's the Brighton manager for those who don't know. We had this one from Young Devi 51. Interesting.
Trey Lance will be fine, Young. Trey Lance will be fine. Don't worry about it. Yeah. You'll be fine.
Yeah, we've had a lot of like other fans. We had Eagle fans in here. We saw like some Niner fans. It's crazy.
I like the fact that football, which is it's football in England because you kick it with your feet, and it's the birthplace of the sport, gets turned into football by fans of a sport who there's very little kicking involved. Because technically, really, British football is football, isn't it? Let's be without wanting to go down that particular hill.
I don't know. You want to go at 1:25, Rob?
It really isn't. But I don't understand why we have to call it football or soccer for that matter. But there we are.
I'll be with Brett on that. When you guys first started talking about the Spurs, I thought San Antonio as well.
And one final, maybe some supportive from Darren here, who says, me and Adam are in the same spot supporting Spurs and the Seahawks.
It's a rough ride, Darren, but some of us have got to do it. And one day we'll have our day in the sun, Darren, and we'll enjoy it like nothing else.
Well, Adam, Robbie, it's been great to speak to you again, and thank you for your company. Thank you to everybody who's watched the stream. Thank you to everybody who has been part of the draft coverage over the last few weeks. It's always kind of weird when it finishes. You put so much effort in, and then it kind of just ends with, it just finishes. It just really abruptly goes, and that's the draft. See you later. And then the adverts come on. Yeah.
Is it like finishing your A-levels, Rob?
I actually was quite relieved when I finished my A-levels because the small story. I was not the best at school because I don't know if this comes across on the streams or not, but I like to talk and mess about, and that did not coincide well with schooling. So my dad had to basically sit me down before my A-levels and my GCSEs and basically teach me everything in like 2 weeks before, and he like dragged me through my exams so that I could actually have a career. And so when my A-levels finished, it was great because I wasn't being taught by my dad at like 8 o'clock in the morning anymore to make up for the fact that I messed around in college and school. So there you go. That's I don't know whether that answers your question or not there, Adam.
Yeah, it's more that, you know, when you do have those, you know, month of awful period, and for those that don't know, A-levels are kind of our SATs for our American viewers, the equivalent. And I don't know, I always found that, you know, when you finish your exam period and you've gone through even a fortnight or 3 weeks, a month of revision, and then you put the pen down in that final exam, it's like, well, what the hell are you supposed to do tomorrow? And it's just a very odd feeling, isn't it?
I do remember when I finished my A-levels, I was confronted by a Buddhist monk in Rotherham Town Centre, who was trying to convert me, which was, you know, not what I expected to see in Rotherham Town Centre. Anybody who's ever been to Rotherham will know that. So on that note, we shall end it there. Subscribe to the YouTube channel, Patreon if you want to continue supporting Seahawks Draft Blog. There will be a bit more on the blog before I take a break, so SeahawksDraftBlog.com for that. Thank you. Seahawks 3 picks. Lots of content still on YouTube channel, including that interview with Kay Johnson, if you want to check that out. We'll see you again soon. And thanks for being with us for this live stream.